Welcome to the Gestalt IT Roundtable, a series of podcasts in which we discuss a variety of technical topics that are important to IT practitioners in the community on a variety of subjects. My name is Tom Hollingsworth. I am the networking, security, and wireless analyst for Gestalt IT, and I'm happy to be bringing you this very special episode brought to you by our friends at Fortinet, talking a little bit about some of the challenges that we might face in cloud and security as well. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our panelists and guests today to talk so you know a little bit more about them before we jump into the topic, starting with Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. My name is Greg Stewart. I work for a small consulting firm based out of South Dakota. I'm an enterprise engineer. I also am on Twitter at vdestination, and my blog is vdestination.com.
All right, thanks, Greg. Chris?
I'm Chris Grundman, and I am a consultant, content creator, coach, and mentor. You can learn more about what I do and what I've been doing at chrisgrundman.com.
All right, and finally, joining us from Fortinet is Vince. Vince, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Vince Wong, Senior Director for Cloud at Fortinet, where we help our customers secure any application on any cloud. Looking forward to the conversation here today and sharing some of our thoughts and insights here.
All right, thank you all very much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. Let's jump into the topic of today's roundtable, which is all about cloud. Now, I'm sure by now you guys are sick to death of hearing about cloud because you've been hearing for months, if not years, that cloud is the thing that we need to be doing. And some companies are all in and driving at 100 miles an hour to get to their destination as fast as possible. And there are still some companies who are not completely sold on the idea of cloud for a variety of reasons, whether they're related to regulatory issues or security or just cost. And that means that no matter what, when you're talking about cloud, you may not be talking to an audience that is in the same place that you are in your journey. And that is a problem, because how can you tell people how to effectively migrate to cloud and utilize cloud daily if you don't know where people are? So I think we need to discuss a little bit about how people end up in different places of their cloud journey before we kind of talk about what that solution is. Now, Greg, you do a lot of work with a lot of companies that are kind of looking at this cloud migration. What are some of the challenges that you think that companies have faced that have forced them to evaluate very carefully how they get to the cloud in various stages?
Sure. Well, I would say probably one of the first things is that it's just not a tangible thing. And a lot of customers that I've dealt with, either in the federal space or commercial space, enjoy having that tangible data center, in a room, in a closet, in their building. And the cloud can sometimes, for those organizations, be kind of a difficult idea to grasp. So for them, it's really understanding how things connect, whether they're doing hybrid cloud or going to do complete, cloud migration from on-premise to cloud, trying to helping them understand how that process goes, how endpoints connect, et cetera, and just making them feel a little bit more comfortable being somewhere else off their premises. So that's probably the biggest things that we run into. Security used to be a really big issue, but it seems to have come along. It's really grown a lot in the years that have passed here, and security has become a much more feasible solution in the cloud as opposed to how it used to be. It used to be like the #1 scare tactic of trying to get people to keep their stuff on premises was like, no way, I'm not going to move my stuff somewhere where I can't maintain the security of it. So yeah, so that's what I would say is probably those are probably the two of the biggest things.
Yeah, I would say that we've often heard traditionalists, when it comes to data centers that prefer things to be on premises, referred to as server huggers. I love my server, but I would argue that your average CFO in a company is just as big a server hugger as anybody else, because by being able to hug said server, they know that they've actually paid for something, and that's an asset that they can depreciate and amortize and do all of those financial things. And I would definitely agree that security is also kind of a hugger aspect as well, because you can just run downstairs and unplug it when you're being hacked, and you think that you can get things turned off quickly, and that gives people that reassuring, warm security blanket kind of feeling, even if it's a little bit misguided, because that's not how IT works today in any stretch or form. Now, Chris, you talk to a lot of customers through the work that you do, and I think that there are a lot of different drivers that can cause people to kind of be hesitant to jump into the cloud journey, or even companies that have started their cloud journey and then found roadblocks along the way. So what are you hearing from your side of the fence?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And I think, Greg's 100% right. There are definitely some folks that are just dragging their feet. But to your point, there's also folks that are actually going all in or at least somewhat in and still end up in different places. And a big part of that is just the work that's required to refactor applications to move to the cloud and really leverage that architecture. Obviously, you can, potentially just kind of lift and shift, as they say, applications monolithically into the cloud, but that's not always the best way to do it. And so a lot of the folks I work with actually recommend against that and actually take a little bit slower approach to move applications in as you can refactor them, or do new development in the cloud and keep legacy things on premises. And there's a couple different tactics there. So I think that's a big part of where people end up in different places along the journey, even if they're all going for the same destination. Also, there's been a big amount of shadow IT happening over the last few years as the cloud rolled out and some developers kind of jumped the gun, so to speak, at least according to what their IT manager or their CTO or CIO may have wanted, where we've got folks that are into different clouds and already doing development work, maybe in multiple clouds, and now they've chosen one and they've got to move things over or deal with that scatter and scasm. So I think that's another aspect as well, which is just the basic shadow IT and folks kind of doing what they want.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. There are a lot of folks that the hesitancy is easy to explain. It's the hard chargers that suddenly realize they're multi-cloud without any kind of inkling of how they got there, and now they're hitting roadblocks of integrations. And what do you mean I have to refactor this application because it needs to do something different? I feel like refactoring is a four-letter word in the developer community sometimes. Now, Vince, you have an even different perspective from this because you work with a lot of customers who come to you to help solve these problems. And I know that Fortinet's put a lot of effort and thought into how to do that. And I was hoping maybe you could kind of explain kind of what you see and maybe give us an idea of some of the things that you're doing to help alleviate these uneven cloud deployments.
Yeah, sure. I mean, everything we've just heard is absolutely spot on when we talk to our customers. They're all different places of journey. Some of this is accidental, right? Because all of a sudden one day the board says you must do, and then they had to go figure out how to do, but not necessarily do it well. And so sometimes it's move fast and move first, and then worry about everything else later. And then when you take a pause, they realize they've made decisions and they've done things that they probably could have done better or differently. And so as a result of that, what you then have is customers having this complex environment. There's lack of visibility. There's accidental multi-cloud where some applications work on one, some on the other because of various reasons. And so where their challenge is trying to find that consistency across all these different deployments. Plus, with resources and skills gap, that actually adds further complexity to how fast they can move. And then as a result of that, some actually take a pause, and while some continue to move forward and take their lumps along the way.
Yes, I absolutely agree that there are a lot of challenges that people don't even understand until they kind of wade into the mess. And that makes it difficult to discover. It's not too dissimilar from trying to change the tire on a car while you're driving it. You have to do it, but are you capable of doing it? And so that leads people to develop different skill sets, to try to find different solutions to fix specific point problems that maybe don't mesh well together. And that leads to a lot of things that we've seen over the years. I think my favorite term is the idea of swivel chair management, where you have multiple different systems that give you a piece of the puzzle, but the only way to work between them is to have separate monitors and workstations on your desk. And you have to swivel your chair back and forth between all of them in the hopes that one of them is going to pick up on the piece that you need to either improve performance or prevent attackers from getting into your system. And there's no easy way to train for that, because if you have multiple different systems, you have to have multiple different ops people that can work on those systems. And that is a huge challenge that a lot of people have said when they're getting into cloud. My people know how to do on-premises data center. They do not know how to do AWS. And the AWS people don't know how to do Azure. And the Azure people don't know how to use GCP. And so, Vince, what are some of the ways that Fortinet is trying to fix those problems?
Well, I think the biggest thing to solve for is that every customer is moving at different places with different options. If you talk to two identical customers in the same space, in the same industry, and same size, they're going to have different approaches. So the way to solve for this is to be able to create the ability to be flexible and dynamic, to be adaptive to whatever the strategy is, by having integrations on the major cloud providers, solutions that can be deployed anywhere, and then bringing them back together with a with a single pane of glass, with a singular platform that can provide that visibility and consistency, no matter where those applications are. But and I think the other thing to consider is, when you hear platform, everyone thinks, oh, you have to have everything all from one vendor. And part of that adaptive solution approach is to be able to have things that are well integrated with multiple technologies, so that there is that flexibility as well in working with different technologies, different platforms, different solutions, and find your way to fit in and then help tie things together to improve that customer experience there.
I'll jump in here and say that I hear the term single pane glass a lot when I talk to companies, because it's kind of a almost like a Kleenex, Crayola kind of term that we use to define these multiple dashboards. I honestly think that some of the IT pros out there may have even rolled their eyes as soon as you said it, out of habit, because is it really a single pane of glass? So can you tell our audience out there, what is it that Fortinet is doing with their adaptive cloud platform that really does turn your management solution into a single pane of glass?
Well, I think that at the core of everything Fortinet does is the Fortinet security fabric. So that's that core element that everything is built on. Versus, if you think about other solutions out there, when they single pane, that means a lot of single panes put together and very loosely coupled, or it's single pane on some but not others. Versus if you look across the Fortinet solution with our security fabric, we provide a platform built from the ground up, and everything we do stems off of this. So then there's a common language that every product solution component talks to. But not only that, we also understand that you can't force fit the same solution and force customers to consume and adopt 100% of everything in order to get that benefit. So we put a lot of effort to create a broad ecosystem. I actually would say we have one of the broadest, widest ecosystems out there for the security fabric, from competitive products, third-party products, and then tying that together so that when the customer gets there, there is an ability to plug in and integrate into the existing deployment and add to that. And then as they migrate and they want to add more Fortinet, obviously it works even better than that. And so I think that, to me, is really what a single pane means. It's being able to pull the visibility and be able to automate things and have a common language across not only our solutions, but across technologies and solution providers out there in the entire IT ecospace and the cloud space there.
Yeah, I would agree that that's super important. And Greg, maybe I was hoping you'd give us a little bit of insight. How important is it to be able to have all of those pieces in one unified location, not just visibility, but security aspects of it and the automation capabilities? Is that something that you feel like customers really should be selecting for whenever they're trying to figure out what platforms they want to embrace once they move forward in their cloud journey, no matter where they happen to be?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to be able to manage it all in a single space. The problem with the whole single pane of glass line is that how many single panes of glass do we have now? So we're using so many different things inside of the data center space. It's hard to jam it all into one true single pane of glass. But I think from a an administrative overhead point of view, administrators need to have the least amount of things to do that they can. So the more that they can manage from a true single pane of glass, the better it will be for the entire organization. So having security in the same place as networking and storage and everything else is really, kind of the way that those kind of organizations need to focus, especially when they're looking at cloud providers and such. So yeah, the single pane of glass, I'm kind of on that side where I'm rolling my eyes just a little bit, but it's just been so overused. But it seems that every vendor is using that term now, and we just end up with all of these single panes of glass. So as much as we can consolidate down to a true single pane of glass is better for everybody, I think.
Yeah, and I think it can't be understated, especially, as we record this, it's mid-2021, and we've seen a massive number of security breaches through a variety of different methods with very little time to react before we start seeing encrypted files and ransom systems and things like that. And without having an operations person who has visibility across a number of different systems to say, wait a minute, something's going on here. I mean, you could find yourself spending a holiday weekend trying to unencrypt your systems, and nobody wants that. Chris, I was thinking maybe, you have a lot of visibility into a bunch of different clouds and some products. How important is this idea of automation? And frankly, are there offerings that have this integrated, or is this one of those table stakes things that people looking to make that cloud journey really need to include even at the beginning because of the capabilities that it expands on later in their journey?
Yeah, this is very, very important to have included in. And, there's not really, at least from the cloud provider side of things, there's not really anything out there today. And there's not much motivation for there to be something in the future, right? So it doesn't really benefit AWS to build interoperability in with GCP or Azure with AWS or, Oracle with anybody else. So it's really incumbent upon the end user to work with someone, a third party to the public cloud provider, to be able to have visibility and control into all of those domains, especially if they're in a multi-cloud environment, which essentially, if you include SaaS tools, everyone is at some level. And so whether or not you're able to actually hit that panacea of a single pane of glass, I think being able to have a single source of truth and a single source point for policy control is absolutely vital to really being able to have that full kind of command and control of your environment that you want, right? And this is really complicated because I think a lot of folks are used to doing these kind of operations, right? Whether it's upgrading things or installing new things or changing things or just supporting the infrastructure for a great user experience on infrastructure that they own and control, right? And so that server you can hug, right, is very different than when you're using a public cloud that's accessible over the internet that your user is connecting to with their own cell phone, at some coffee shop somewhere. And in that scenario, right, that you own none of the infrastructure, but you're still responsible for that user experience. And that's why this a higher level of visibility control and security and risk assessment is really required at this point. It is getting more complex, but I guess that's job security.
Yeah, I would totally agree that we've added a lot of complexity, and by necessity, we have to have better tools to help us manage it, because otherwise it will spiral out of control. I wanted to come back to a point that we kind of brought up earlier about this idea of multiple stage cloud journeys. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what Vince had said about adaptive cloud, because one of the things that kind of came to mind for me was this concept that we had, at least in the United States, of starter homes, where I'm just starting out in my career and my life, and I buy a little house because it's just me and my spouse. And then a few years down the road, I have kids. So I need to upgrade to a slightly bigger house that has different amenities. And I know that it's a nightmare for most people because they've got a lot of stuff that they have to deal with, and they're dealing with different mortgage companies and realty companies and things like that. And I know that it would just be a whole lot easier if someone could just maybe sell me a house that will grow with me as I change the way that I do things, which I know kind of sounds like a really ham-fisted analogy, but I think it kind of speaks to some of the challenges that we see in the cloud space, where I may pick a certain platform or a solution to fix a problem that I have today when I only have, 50 machines deployed in the cloud. But if everything takes off the way that I want it to, and I suddenly have 8,000 machines, what happens to that point solution, which may have been inexpensive at the beginning? Does it scale with what I want to scale with? Greg, is this a problem that you've seen in your experience of people buying the wrong size solution at the beginning only to regret it later, and now they're kind of stuck with a bunch of technical debt?
Absolutely. And a lot of that we've seen, people go from a traditional server infrastructure where there's a lot of investment up front. And we've seen people shift from that traditional server infrastructure to more of a hyper-converged infrastructure where it's a little bit easier to scale, right? And you don't have to buy as much upfront, so it'll grow with you. But now what I'm seeing is a shift from HCI straight to the cloud, where it's just completely on demand. I mean, you can just, totally adaptively just scale as you need to scale. So I think that's the real beauty of the cloud, and your euphemism of the starter home is dead on. I mean, it's you start in the cloud and you find a starting place, and then as you need to grow, you just grow. You just grow as you need to, and that's just the beauty of the cloud. So that's a huge selling point to an organization that's trying to make the shift to the cloud, is that, listen, there's no more of this like huge upfront cost. It's capital expenditure that you need to put upfront to get all these servers that you can quote unquote hug, right? You can just get your starter home, quote unquote starter home, and then just let it grow with you as your company grows. And that's really the true beauty of the cloud. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Chris, from the other side of the equation, I know you and I have both worked in really large organizations in the past, and I know that it can be daunting for smaller companies to look at these very large solutions, which are perfect. They'll do everything I want it to do. But kind of as Greg said, there's a lot of CapEx involved with that, because you're going to have to spin up 20 new servers to handle all this management, and they require all this programming backend to integrate it with your systems. And I'm just a small shop with a few people and some workload, and this is not what I need. Do you see some of your clients coming to you saying, we would totally go all in if this was not such a behemoth that we had to tame in order to even get to where we want to be in the cloud to start with?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, we talk a lot about, or at least, in the media, right? We talk a lot about like kind of wealth gaps and wealth concentration among individuals. And that's definitely something that plays out in the economics of business as well, right? And if you're a big company and you can have 100, 200, 300 folks in your IT staff, it's a lot easier to figure this stuff out. And if you are a small business or a medium business, or even a mid-sized enterprise, and you've got a team of 1, 2, 3, maybe even 10 folks, trying to learn something new and deploy it at the same time is obviously really, really challenging, right? And especially those small folks where like somebody's wearing multiple hats and IT is not even their full-time job, which happens in a lot of places, especially at specific locations, right? And so I think that's why there's been such a clamoring for these kind of automated orchestration platforms, the single pane of glass. I mean, that's why it resonates, right? That's why people, like that idea. And the closer we can get to reality there of really providing that interface that gives me enough information to understand what's going on, enough control to really, make sure I can secure and manage the platform for that user experience again, but not require a new degree, right? Or another CCIE.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a huge skills gap there that we haven't even addressed. But, Vince, you've heard both sides of this argument. What if companies are too small to really start off and they're worried about what their growth is going to look like? But, maybe a company is at that gap where they need to make that jump to the next bigger tool, but they're not ready to invest the skills into something brand new compared to where they came from and the horse that brought them to this race. I mean, Fortinet talks a lot about the adaptive nature of their cloud. How does Fortinet Adaptive Cloud address both of these issues?
Well, I think it's a perfect solution for both sides, in that at the end of the day, with Adaptive Cloud, we want to help our customers secure any application, any cloud. And what does that mean? It means to provide solutions, deployment options, flexibility, and the ability to scale and grow, plus consumption options, where some organizations are all in on the CapEx side. That, they're going to bring their term licenses. Others are going to test the waters and kind of figure it out as they go. And they want to have sort of a pay-go option, pay as you go. And the important thing is you have solutions that support both consumption models. You have solutions that can deploy on any of the public cloud providers out there. The three major ones: AWS, Azure's, the Google clouds, and then even as far off as the Alley clouds of the world and others. You enable all these solutions, plus then if you think about it, there's probably about 76% of organizations through our latest survey that are in some form of hybrid cloud, either multi-cloud or hybrid cloud. Then you have to account for the ability to deploy both on premises and in the cloud at the data center, and then try to be able to make this easy. Going back to the idea of a security fabric, that cyber platform. And the real benefit there is you want to lower the operational overhead, the security, blind spots, and then be able to kind of bring that forward. So to me and to Fortinet, it doesn't make sense. Why would a customer, an organization, have to create separate different policies for, say, setting up your network firewalls, from your cloud firewalls, from your SD-WAN on-premise to SD-WAN across multi-clouds, where it's probably the same technology and you have probably the same use case. So for us, we have our FortiGate and FortiGate virtual appliances, FortiGate VMs, that allows our customers through our security fabric to have the same policies consistently across, no matter where you deploy that, either in the cloud or on-prem. Security policies are the same. SD-WAN, policies and setup and automations are the same. And then in that case, then the sum of that is it doesn't really matter what cloud you're on today, what cloud you will be on tomorrow. There's that flexibility and scale that can help grow every step of the way, regardless of what that need becomes. That's different than today. And if you talk to some customers, they're ready to make this huge fundamental leap into edge compute, where you're gonna further complex your problem by taking it not just from on-premise to cloud, but you're gonna take cloud into regional clouds, local clouds, and other separations. That's a huge amount of complexity that organizations are faced with today already. And so the idea then is, if you do that, and if you're ready for that leap, it's the same technology, the same approach, the same fundamentals that then can scale and grow as customers are ready to have or need at that point in time.
It sounds like it's a solution that allows you to program it once and deploy it no matter how big or wide that you scale. How does that help solve the issue that a lot of companies are facing when they're going to make that switch from, as Greg alluded to, with this whole idea of hugging my servers and having a lot of capital expenditures on hardware and software, to what we consider to be the more traditional cloud model of some more operational expense where we're paying per use, we're paying per growth? How does the adaptive cloud model that you guys work on really address that shift in thinking?
Well, we support both traditional consumption models as well as the pay-as-you-go, right? So as customers are adding to it, I'll give you a great example. Fortinet is leading, one of the leading, if not the only, solution providers on AWS firewall web application firewall for managed WAF rules. Some customers are just starting out their cloud journey, their cloud application journey. They're looking to very basic, in the cloud available native firewalls, but through these managed rule sets that we're supplying, we enable our customers to plug into that security fabric, benefit from our cybersecurity expertise through FortiGuard Labs, protect their assets, and then as they're increasing their complexity and they're increasing their need for a more complete solution, then they can migrate into a full Fortinet WAF solution, get the full benefit, and then plug that back into a broader deployment. So there's that deployment option, as and that's you can take it step by step as you go, and then figure out what you need, and then you realize that whatever you've done today, you can expand that solution set, add to it for the need for tomorrow. So there's that deployment option, and then there's the consumption models where we support all various forms of either self-service in the marketplace as customers. You're going to find that there's going to be a significant contingent of customers in organizations who just don't want to deal with a third party or an intermediary. They just want to go to cloud straight away, right? So we have the ability to have a marketplace consumption model. We have the ability for them to work through, other organizations and partners in the channel to then, figure out and advise them, and we can do it ourselves as well. So, lots of different choices. It's just, it's like it's like going back to the days when we were kids and you're reading the Choose Your Own Adventure. We have to choose your own adventure. Customers just need to choose, and every step, Fortinet is there for them as an option for them to kind of fulfill that need.
Well, it sounds like everyone's cloud journey is going to look slightly different, whether you started off slow or you started off at a sprint and maybe you were reevaluating things as you moved along, having to refactor code and applications. Maybe you hit a few stumbling blocks, or you're right there ready to make the jump to the next level. You just have to have a little bit of reassurance that all of those skills that you've been spending all this time working on aren't going to just disappear. And I think that the real solution to this problem is to find the right partner to work with that will allow you to grow, whether you're just starting out, in the middle, or hit a mature level where you're firing on all cylinders and everything is going the way you want it to. And at least in my mind, I think Fortinet has all the right tools and the right capabilities to help you get there, especially if security is front of your mind, because they have a great track record. And as Vince has mentioned several times, they have a great security fabric. Vince, I was wondering if there are people listening to this episode that would like to know a little bit more about some of the things that you do at Fortinet, including Adaptive Cloud. What's a great place for them to go to check that out?
Well, the best place is going to our website at fortinet.com and looking under the cloud security options there. And there we'll have a variety of resourcing and let's call it even get started primers to help our customers understand the challenges in cloud, and then walk them through the different options and considerations to better secure their cloud on any cloud for their application running on those clouds.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our panelists, Greg and Chris, for joining us. I also want to thank Vince and our friends at Fortinet for bringing you this episode. Remember to head over to our website at gestaltit.com to learn a little bit more about this episode and some of the other episodes of our Gestalt IT Roundtable. And if you want to check out more great videos like this, please check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/gestaltitvideo. But for myself, Tom Hollingsworth, and for our great Gestalt IT community, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.